Welcome and hello everybody to Max Hatter. We're today gonna build a open space food court in the shape of a hippodrome on this lovely Mediterranean island that you currently see. So this is actually the first time I'm doing a video like this, and that's why the quality might not be this great. I'm still learning. I hope it's okay. So I'm building this as part of a building challenge from the Discord of the Planet Zoo YouTuber Gunter's Gaming. And it's a lovely community. I'm gonna leave a link to it in the description, and they're always happy to involve new people that love the game and that love talking. So the original island I tried to design a bit after the actual Greek island of Chios, and the results vary, as you can see. But I still think it's a nice enough shape. So I'm gonna build this up in a few series, depending on how this video goes, and if I'm not getting hunted down from YouTube for daring to make this bad of quality of a video, I may make a series out of it, expanding the island bit for bit. So you might be asking, why Mediterranean island? That is because I am studying archaeology currently, and my main focus is on classical archaeology, which is about Rome and Greece, and so I'm very interested in this topic, and that's why I thought about that first when building this challenge. You might also be asking why the food court looks the way it does. And that is because I'm currently writing a university paper on the subject of chariot racing in Athens, and that's just why this structure was in my mind specifically. I'm actually not going to go into too much detail / realism with this. It has to be just enough space for creativity. I just want to use the vague shape for this. Because as you can see, I at first thought about doing it round on both ends of it, but I decided to go a bit more into realism because I just thought it would look more interesting. Of course, building this round point would be a challenge at times, and you can see me struggle trying to get everything into the right shape, going through multiple versions. So I said before that this is supposed to be a hippodrome, but maybe you are not aware what this is. The clue is in the name. Hippos means horse in Greek, and you have it in words like hippopotamus, which means river horse, or hippocampus, which is a part of the brain that is named like that because it kind of looks like a seahorse, which is called a hippocampus. And it was used for chariot racing as well as horse racing. And those are two very interesting sports because if, for example, during the Olympic Games or really any important game in ancient Greece, women were not allowed to enter. But there was an exception for these two sports because the winner was not the person that was leading the horses, but the actual owner of the horses. So any woman rich enough to have horses to enter could even win them. So this is actually inspired by something different, the Plaza del Anfiteatro in Italy, which used to be an amphitheater, but over time the theater disappeared and it's just a plaza now with houses around it. I just thought that was a very neat thing when I learned about it. And of course, amphitheaters are the most famously known is the one in Rome, the Colosseum, named after a giant statue from Emperor Nero, which was placed next to it. And I often see people like calling amphitheaters colosseums, which is of course a bit silly. That's like seeing a statue and just calling it this is the Statue of Liberty, just because that's like a famous example. And I was actually with my family in Croatia a few years back, and I'm gonna put a picture here so you can see it. And they actually have a very well preserved amphitheater, and they just keep calling it Colosseum. And me being like a bit of a stickler, a nerd, was like very annoyed at that. Now, a very interesting thing is that the person that won wasn't actually the person leading the horses, but the person that owned the horses. And that had some interesting effects. One, for example, was that women were allowed to enter these games, which was usually illegal for anything else, but they were allowed to own horses, so obviously they could send their horses there, and that means women were actually allowed to participate and even win. For example, the first woman to win the Olympian Games was a Spartan princess named Chrysica, which I definitely mispronounced, and on behalf of her father she was sent there, and then he could brag like, look what a great daughter I have, she's an Olympic winner. Who can say that about their daughters? Another interesting thing is that you were able to send multiple teams. For example, there was the Greek Alcibiades, and yes, I definitely mispronounced that, who in 416 BC sent 7 teams to the Olympic Games, and he ended up winning the first, the second, and the 4th place. And like I said, back then, when you won, you often got like poems made about yourself, paid by yourself, obviously. And it goes like, oh, look at him, great guy with 2 olive wreaths on his head. Isn't he just amazing? The games were usually only allowed for actual Greeks. Remember, Greece looked very different back then. That would have included for example, a lot of Turkey, modern day Turkey. There were exceptions, for example, Nero. He was, if you actually know about him, he's probably this crazy tyrant, which he kind of was, but he was also this very self-absorbed artist type who always thought of himself as like this appreciator of the nice things. So Nero actually decided to join the Olympic Games because he was a fan of Greek culture, and just to show you how vain he was, he actually delayed them by 1 year just so he could join them, which of course isn't a thing that's supposed to happen. And you might be asking, what sport did he participate in? None. Because at the Olympic Games there were actually more than just sporting events, there were musical events, some of which he specifically added so he could then participate. And I don't think I'm gonna surprise you by saying that he won, and he was like, oh look, I'm such a great guy, I'm like the greatest artist in the world, and everyone kind of behind his back was like, yeah, Nero, you know, you're the emperor of the known world. No matter how shitty you are, they're not gonna let you lose this event. And then he did something that really pissed off the Senate, because if an emperor returns, they usually are like big parades for things they conquered, like, look at all these valuable things I conquered, look at all these people I conquered, look at all these slaves I took. And he just comes back and he's like, oh look, these laurel wreaths I won because I'm such a great musician, am I not great? And the Senator's like, the fuck, Nero, are you doing? This isn't appropriate, please stop. And that really made the Senate turn against him. You may be asking, what is this giant Hippodrome doing on this tiny Mediterranean island? And that is a good question that is probably lost to history, and so I don't have to come up with an explanation myself. No, but of course it is because I thought it looked nice, and that is why it is here. And sometimes that's the only explanation you need. So this middle piece, you often see it decorated with obelisks and columns and statues and everything, which I also kind of did with like the two lions and the stag and the horses, of course. But I just thought it would be very nice to have this little green section in the middle. I tried to use more Mediterranean plants that you might expect here. Like for example with cypress and olive trees and just ferns in general. And I actually think it turns out rather nice. I added a few more flowers to add dimension to it, as well as a few tiny bushes. Now in ancient Greece there were multiple sporting events. The four most important were the Panhellenic Games, which were even used to measure time both then and now by archaeologists. The most important one would be the Olympic Games in honor of Zeus, obviously in Olympia. We start the cycle. Then you had the Pythian Games in honor of Apollo, held in Delphi. Then you had the Nemean Games in the honors of, again, Zeus and his son Hercules. Nemea, the region you probably know best from the Nemean lion, which Hercules killed. And then you had the Isthmian Games held in Isthmia in honor of Poseidon. Now there were many more other sporting events, but those were a lot more localized and less important in the grand scheme. The most important one of those was probably the Panathenaic Games in Athens, which always tried to join the other four, our games honor of Athena, they are so amazing, we are Athens and everything, but they kind of just never made the cut. Now these games are actually the ones I learned most of the other information from, because because in university this was the topic of one of my lectures, and that's where I learned most of the information about sports in ancient Greece. And since we are near the end of the video, I would like to thank you everyone for watching. I don't know, like, comment, subscribe, or whatever things YouTubers tell their viewers. Don't feel you need to do any of these. I know this is a very rough video, and I'm just glad you made it all the way through to hear me say this. And I'll be happy to see you again. What you can actually do is tell me how to improve my videos, what to cut out and what not. Were you interested in the history part, or would you like it more if I talk more about the building process? I thought that I don't have that much to say, so I just fill it out with historical facts, and I hope you enjoyed those. So, have a nice day, and goodbye.